Hello everyone, welcome. We are so excited to be sharing with you today the very first episode of our podcast, A Pastor Walks Into a ... This will be a recorded series where Pastor Dave sits down to talk with leaders from spiritual organizations and nonprofit organizations to learn about their missions and what they're doing within their communities. Today, Pastor Dave sits down with Caryn Blanton of Shoreline Community Services. Recently, Shoreline Community Services opened a day center for our unsheltered neighbors right across the street from Christ Lutheran Church. We're so excited to have them in our neighborhood and to be helping those who are struggling with homelessness or just needing some assistance with basic services. So today you'll notice our service is centered around the theme of how the Bible tells us we should be caring for our unsheltered neighbors. So we hope you'll settle in with us and join us in this gathering prayer. God, your word often talks about people in need finding safety. Your own son's earthly life began as a refugee seeking shelter in an unknown land. We pray today for our unsheltered neighbors from all walks of life, that all with no place to call home will be guided to places of peace and security. Open our eyes to their needs and use our hands and feet to do your work, for we know that when we serve others, we serve you. We pray this in your beautiful, holy name. Amen. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these siblings of mine, you did for me."
So welcome to our first inaugural podcast launch of A Pastor Walks Into a ... That's what we came up with our preliminary title. So we don't know how to do this. We're going to shot. Clearly we like a lot of patterns. So you can see we have all the patterns are here. This is Caryn Blanton. I'm going to interview her and to talk about her work at the Compass Station. And so that's what's going to happen here. So we're going to talk to each other and you guys get to listen in as we do this. So Caryn, welcome to our studio.
I know, I'm thrilled to be here. This is fun.
It's fancy. We've known each other a bit, but I want to find out sort of your story. Tell me about your journey, your personal journey. How did you get here? And I don't mean just like PB. I mean, kind of, how did you get to be doing this work that you're doing, working with people who are unhoused? So walk me through this. Where did this come from?
Yeah, it's a good story. It's a painful story, but it's a good story. So I was a married person for 21 years. I had two small boys. And the person I was married to, at the time we didn't know what the issue was, but now I know, was suffering from mental illness.
Oh no.
And pretty much abandoned ship.
Yeah.
And the boys and I were left to start over.
Yeah.
It was an absolutely unexpected piece of our story, for sure. I had determined when I got married at a very young age, 24, that was it for me. We were going to be married forever and ever. And
Same.
yeah.
That
So
didn't work out for me either.
and then life happens, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I was the carpool mom. I was, we were world travelers with our family. We, like, for all practical purposes, when you looked in on it, it looked like a pretty tight run ship that was not going to fall apart. And yet, little by little, it did.
Yeah.
So, through a series of strange or not strange events, I ended up connecting. At the time, I was at a Presbyterian church with an outreach pastor there, whom I had been doing some work down in Tijuana. And she was starting a Christian community development corporation with some other people, and invited me into that process. So that was a startup operation there. It fit very well with just things that had been in my heart since the time I was a small child. And little by little, we built that into something. We were working mostly in Hispanic immigrant neighborhoods. So
whereabouts was this now?
Costa Mesa in Orange
Mesa.
County. Thank
Yeah.
you. So that was a 15-year commitment that we all made to each other in community development. You say it's about a 15 to 20 year, it's a turnover of a generation. That's what it is. So before you start seeing change. So we were all committed for that 15-year. I made it 10. Most of us made it around the 10-year mark. But it was transformative to me. And I found as a white suburban woman in Orange County, I had much more in common with those I was serving than where I was living at the time. And my kids joined into the work with me, and we just sort of grew up in that.
That's great.
Yeah.
I wonder sometimes, like, if the experience of having you going through the end of a marriage also then, like, you think your life's going on this track and then you find it's going on another track, if that also gave you a sense of connection with the people that you were working with, that their life might have been on a track and then suddenly they're over here. And it kind of like gives you some empathy for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
At the very beginning of the work, my life was absolutely upside down. My boss, who was much younger than me, but incredibly wise and discerning, where AA or NA people have the one day at a time motto. We had the half day at a time motto because I couldn't even make it the one day. So we met faithfully every morning and would map out the schedule till noon, and then we'd have lunch and we'd meet after lunch, and then we'd schedule what I had to do until the end of the day. And then it became the one day at a time, and then it was 1 week at a time and a month at a time. And pretty soon I didn't need any time.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So as you're doing that work, helping other people, you're also getting shaped and changed in your own health, right?
Yes.
And it sounds like your boys also did that work. They were also
Absolutely.
involved, and that probably was, I would guess, formative for them too.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. We were in it together.
Yeah. So you were doing that work. Then how did you start working? First of all, what got you down here to San Diego?
So the end of that 10-year run, I said to my husband, I don't have to live here anymore.
Right,
I mean,
right.
Community Development 101, you live and work in the place, you're there, right? That's where you are. So he said, gosh, I never thought you'd ever stop doing this. So I just always thought we'd be here in Orange County. And we had a family meeting and said, if we could do whatever we wanted, where would we go? We both love the
answer
coast.
is always San Diego.
Well, it was a big city within a 2-hour drive of my kids because
Right.
I thought they already had lost one parent and I didn't want them to lose another.
Right.
Not that they needed me, they're grown men, but
No,
I
but
kind
I
of
get it,
need
yeah.
the tether.
Yeah.
So it was Long Beach or San Diego, and
it's a
he
no-brainer.
had lived in in Long Beach for 20 some years.
Yeah.
So we ended up in San Diego.
That's great.
And-
That's great. And so that gets you down here, and then you started working. I got to know you when you were starting to do PB Street Guardians. So that was some. Were you doing work with people who were unhoused before that, or was that your first?
No.
Like-
So when I first got to San Diego, I started working with refugee families in City Heights, doing after school art programming because that's the language barrier just disappears when you're doing art. So I did that for quite a while. And in my own neighborhood here in PB, I started meeting my unhoused neighbors and having conversations. And they all said, if we only had work, if we could just get a job, life would be totally transformed and everything would be better. So I took that to heart.
So you figure you're going
I
to
think I'll start a business and put you all to work. And we tried that.
Yeah.
And it was successful.
It was successful. It was successful. It was a good thing. I think, and as I recall, you were doing work that was helping people do both security and also cleanup and some event work, right? Those are the things you had people doing and trained to do.
So the main piece was the Clean and Safe program, which was connected to our business improvement district in the city, which was actually doing street sweeping and graffiti removal and weed removal and trash pickup and all of that stuff. Then we started kind of the janitorial and custodial work. Well, some of the churches and businesses hired us to do that. And then the event setup and takedown. So it kind of morphed.
You, when you did that, I saw something, I've been doing some work in homeless communities as well, but I saw you accomplish something that I had rarely ever seen before, which was you got people who were lefty liberals and people who were to the right conservative all agreeing that your program was a good program, which that was kind of a new thing because you had the people who wanted to help folks who were on the street and provide programs for them. And then you had people who wanted to make sure those people had work and that they were productive members of the community. And all of those folks were happy with that. That was a thing.
It was a thing. And it was one of the most surprising things, I think, that even the not in my backyard people said,
you can work in my backyard.
Not in my you can work in my backyard, but not in my backyard, all of you, but you and you and you and you are proving something, so you can come. The 8 of you can come.
I always think of that as like it's called the scandal of the particular, right? You can be against a whole people group for whatever reasons, your upbringing, your way of seeing things, but then when you meet one person, right? It's like now that person's got a name and a story, and you begin to it sort of upends. So that's why people can start to say, "Well, I'm against fill in the blank, but this one is welcome." And
which is the whole key. And even in the work that I'm doing now is connecting. It's the relationship piece. So connecting people to people. So people do have names and do have stories, and the more we find out about each other, the more tolerant we are, the more apt we are to be helpful, caring, compassionate, and
it's critical, right? I mean, you think about how we even just refer to people, even folks who are on the street, as our went from being the homeless to our unhoused neighbors, but they still don't have names yet, right? No one refers to me as walking down the street going, "Oh, that's one of our housed neighbors." Right. There's a dichotomy that happens. And so I think beginning to do that work where people are connecting also, because not all the people who are in there are housed or unhoused. They're all finding out each other about each other and their stories.
And we're finding that we've got about 20 volunteers working at the Compass Station. And I've heard several stories of them being out and about in the community and running into people who have been guests at the Compass Station, and now they're seeing them on the outside, and it's like, oh, hey, Susan, they're now people are knowing, oh, Eddie, how's it going? So now there's a relationship, right? And
It's building community. Yeah, it's great. So let's talk about the Compass Station. So what's the vision of that place? What are we doing?
Right now, the vision is just to get a strong foundation laid,
Right.
so that it's clipping along on its own. We're holding it very gingerly right now. I think we've got some good protocols in place, some good operational procedures in place, but time will tell.
Right.
So the most important thing, I can't be everywhere all the time.
Right.
So like I said, it takes about 20 volunteers
Right.
in the week to make it happen. And I want to make sure that they feel comfortable, that they feel competent, that they feel strong and comfortable. Did I say comfortable?
Yeah. That may be the main thing.
It is the main thing.
Right. Because people have discomfort for all sorts of reasons.
And many of these volunteers who we're using have had some kind of volunteer experience with this population, but others have not. Literally
Right.
have none. And so that's been really interesting just to watch what that growth pattern looks like on a day-to-day basis. And people are easing into it. I see, it's not so uptight, rigid, that people are relaxing in the space. And that feels really good to me.
That's great. So people, when if you are someone who wanted to come by, you needed something, what could I find there as a client if I was showing up?
Yep. So a few highlights, I would say laundry is a big deal. That's proven to be one of the biggest positives that we have to offer. So, to put a load of laundry in, to charge your phone or your laptop or your tablet, that's a big deal.
Right.
And it's locked in somewhere safe, so you don't have to keep an eye on it, and nobody's going to be messing with it while it's in there, so it's locked safely away while it's charging. We've got a small computer lab where people can look for work, apply for jobs. We're doing a lot of document recovery, looking for IDs and birth certificates and social security cards. That's a goal of ours, to make sure that everybody has those 3 documents. So finding our way through that. We've got nurses who are there. We're hoping to have a nurse on staff every day. Right now we have every other day.
Wow.
So that's a big deal. And then the biggest thing is just on-site resource and service providers who can answer your questions in real time. You're not being sent to a computer or a line somewhere. There are actual people who will sit down and have a conversation with you about what you're needing. And that's county benefits, housing people, Veterans Administration. We have LGBTQ resources, youth services. That's great.
So it's really kind of a one-stop shop.
Absolutely.
or like a hub.
It's a hub.
Yeah, a hub, which is so important. I know that what happens is people get into these sort of little niches, but they're not near each other. They get moved all over the place. So the transportation between places. So having a place to go and cover a whole bunch of issues.
So I had this morning the captain, the lieutenant, and our outreach person from the SDPD.
Yeah, I saw him over there. I was wondering if anything went wrong.
I know, that's what everyone said. We were afraid to come. I told them, you have to get out of here by 10 o'clock. You're bad for business. They were standing in the parking lot chatting, and I'm like, you got to move along. And for once, I'm telling them to move along. But, we're trying to figure out the best ways to collaborate. And I think they learned some things by just walking through and hearing what we were offering. And they want to be a part of it. That's to the extent that it's good for them to be a part of it. But, we want to collaborate. We want to collaborate with everyone.
Well, it's the same thing. Because this is what I learned before, is if the police have a relationship with these people that's on an individual basis, that's not when there's something going wrong, but when instead it's just some people trying to get some help, then it changes the dynamic when they see them in the street in another situation.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, those relationships are critical. Well, that's great. That's exciting. So tune in the future here for A Pastor Walks Into
What did you walk into today?
My own office.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
A reading from Deuteronomy. There will always be poor people in the land. Therefore, I command you to be open-handed toward your fellow Israelites who are poor and needy in your land.